Before the flight took off, my fiancé, the captain, brought a suitcase onto the plane. He claimed it was a special gift from his childhood sweetheart and forbid me from touching it, that I couldn't shake the bad feeling. So I sneaked a look and found high-risk contraband hidden inside.I. turned it in, immediately, using my own professional merits to offset his negligence just to save his career. His little sweetheart was arrested, detained and sentenced to prison. He didn't say a word at the time, but during a later flight emergency, he took a pair of shears to my parachute. Gwen Shaw, you were just jealous of Faye. You intentionally failed her during flight attendant training and then framed her. Did you think doing that would make me love you? In your dreams. I would never marry a woman as petty and cold-hearted as you. I plummeted 10,000 feet from the sky, ending up as nothing more than a pile of bloody remains. When I opened my eyes again, I saw the girl who had come to see him off. I saw the suitcase in his hand. I silently took a step back. This time I won't save you. Luke, according to protocol, this bag needs to be checked and registered. My junior attendant reminded him politely. Lucas Thorne frowned. It's filled with gifts Faye got for me. What could possibly be wrong? Put it under my name. No need to check it. Beside him, Faye Nightingale chimed in with a sweet, coy voice. I've been through the training too. I know the rules. I wouldn't make a mistake with something like this. The attendant offered a thin smile but didn't move, still blocking the way. Another crew member whispered nearby. Knows the rules? Please. She failed the training 3 times. Gwen had to pull strings just to get her a retake, and she still flunked. Faye's face immediately fell. Luke's expression darkened. That's only because Gwen was intentionally making things hard for her. I should have filed for a formal review a long time ago. Faye is talented. There's no way she would have failed otherwise. He turned his head sharply to glare at me, his teeth gritted. Look at your people. They have the nerve to insult Faye right to my face. God knows what nasty things they say behind her back. I remained expressionless, simply watching him in silence. Faye stood there acting like an innocent victim, though her eyes were dripping with provocation. Luke, who really has the power here? Is it the captain or the lead purser? Gwen seems so intimidating that your words don't even seem to matter. Hearing this, Luke's rage boiled over. He kicked the boarding stairs and raised his voice. You won't let me board? Fine. I'm not flying this leg today. I lowered my gaze as fragments of my past life flashed through my mind. Back then, I was so afraid his temper would ruin the flight that I suppressed all objections. After boarding, I checked the bag in secret. When I found the contraband, I was so worried about his future that I used my own awards to swallow the penalty for him. I protected his wings. But in the end, my reward was him personally cutting my parachute as I screamed toward the earth. How pathetic. I looked down, my voice soft. Luke is the captain. He knows the limits of his authority. Since he said it's under his name, we won't check it. Let him board. Seeing me back down, Faye's eyes flickered. She immediately started wheedling. Then I want to fly with Luke too. It's been so long since I've been on a plane. Luke nodded as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Faye hasn't flown in a year. Let her experience the flight this time. That is against regulations, I said, finally looking up. My voice was icy calm. Luke's face twisted. He stared at me with a look full of undisguised fury and warning. What did you say? He hissed. Do you want to lose your wings? Fine. Then you don't fly today. None of them do. The whole crew is grounded. The other attendants looked panicked. One tried to speak up for me, but I stopped her with a single look. Just then the intercom crackled with a dispatch order. Pre-flight check complete. Cabin crew, please prepare for boarding. Luke let out a cold snort. I don't care. It's just one flight for me. But after today, don't even think about stepping onto one of my planes again. Think carefully about your next move. I pushed down my surging emotions and answered in a low voice. I understand. At the same time, I gave a subtle nod to my assistant. She understood the signal perfectly. Luke, if you're so eager to find your own grave, I won't stand in your way this time. Once on board, Faye was still making a scene. I haven't worn a flight attendant uniform since training ended. She hooked her arm through Luke's, smiling brilliantly. I want to wear one today just for the experience. I'll be providing exclusive service for Luke today. I frowned. We don't have extra uniforms. She pouted, acting entitled. Do you think I'm stupid? I was trained. I know there are spares. My tone turned cold. Spare uniforms are for active crew members, not for you to use as a costume for your little games. Luke frowned, trying to soften the blow for her. Faye isn't an outsider. Letting her wear it for a bit won't hurt anything. I finally lost my patience and cut him off. Fine. If she wants to wear it, she has to work. She can be in charge of the meal cart. Faye immediately let out a shrill, girlish laugh. No way. I'm not doing that kind of grunt work. You guys can do it. I'm not a waitress. The crew's faces went pale with anger. One was about to snap, but I raised my hand to stop them. I stood there with a fire burning in my chest. but my face was as still as water. I thought to myself, keep acting out. Let's see who's laughing when we touch down. Using his authority as captain, Luke settled Faye into a first-class seat. Being an attendant is boring. First class is much more comfortable. Just stay here and enjoy the ride. It wasn't long before the service bell rang. An attendant went over, but she came back looking miserable. Gwen, the passenger is demanding you personally. My heart sank. I had already expected this. Sure enough, it was Faye. She was sitting regally in her seat, wrapped in a blanket. A smug, petty smile played on her lips. Her voice was sickly sweet. Oh, since I'm the passenger now and you're the help, you'd better serve me well. I suppressed my disgust, keeping my voice professional. Hello, ma'am. How can I assist you? She acted like I told a joke. She toyed with the edge of her blanket and started giving orders just because she could. I want a blanket. No, wait, a different color. And a pillow, a softer one. Oh, and the toiletry kit, don't you have a new version? I want to try it. As for drinks, bring me 3 different types. I want to compare them. I did everything she asked without a word. Behind me, I could feel my colleague's anger reaching a boiling point. She's doing this on purpose. Someone hissed in the galley. I stopped them again. Don't cause trouble. Remember who we are. A moment later she ordered red wine. I brought the glass to her. She tilted her head, a dark, meaningful smile on her face. I heard that in first class you can ask an attendant to serve you on their knees. Is that true? Behind me, one of the attendants let out a muffled curse. Faye immediately played the victim, her voice turning soft and fragile. Oh my, is this your attitude? I might have to file a complaint. I was trained, remember? I know the rules. If you get enough complaints, you'll be grounded, won't you? I took a deep breath, forcing the rage down. My knees slowly bent until I was crouching before her. I held the wine glass steady with both hands. My voice was firm, and I maintained a perfect professional smile. Of course, ma'am. We are here to serve. She looked like she was listening to the most beautiful music. She laughed like she had won a great war, a loud, piercing, arrogant sound. During training you always said I wasn't right for the job. You said I didn't meet the standards. Now I think you're a perfect fit. She suddenly leaned in close. Her eyes were like knives, and her smile was so bitter it could have stained the floor. A bitch like you is only fit to serve me on her knees. My fingers tightened on the glass. Before I could speak she moved faster. Oops, sorry. My hand slipped, my bad. The red wine splashed over my head. In an instant it soaked my hair and my uniform. It dripped from my forehead and down my cheeks like streaks of blood. It was sticky, cold, and humiliating. I couldn't take it anymore. I turned and bolted for the restroom. The moment the door slammed shut, my hands began to shake. In the mirror, I saw my soaked uniform and a face full of shame. Outside the door, I could hear her laughter cutting through the air like nails being driven into my ears. When I finally stepped out of the restroom, my hair was still dripping. Faye was nowhere to be seen. The crew members looked at me with complicated expressions. What happened? Did something go wrong? I asked, instantly alert. Just then, the co-pilot came out of the cockpit looking awkward. Nothing went wrong, it's just, Faye is in there. Luke told me to step out for a bit. One of the girls couldn't hold it back. She whispered, Gwen, he really doesn't respect you at all. You're out here working your tail off for this flight. And he's... I squeezed my palm so hard my nails dug in. Don't let people like that interfere with our jobs. I barked. I took a deep breath and told everyone to get back to their stations. The flight was only half over. I couldn't let things fall apart. When it was time for the crew meals, I pushed the cart into the cockpit according to protocol. As soon as I pushed the door open, I heard a girlish giggle. Faye was wearing Luke's captain jacket, sitting in the co-pilot seat and posing for photos. Her movements were incredibly fake and theatrical. She saw me and waved with a smile. Gwen, I know the rules. I'll let the co-pilot back in soon. I'm just getting the experience. Luke was leaning against the side, his eyes cold and distant. Don't give me that self-righteous look. Are you going to go cry to the supervisors again? If you really want to marry me, stop with these petty games. He stood up, walked over to me and whispered with a sneer. If you behave yourself, I'll take care of you. But if you dare target Faye like you did before, I won't let you off easily. I almost smashed the meal tray over his head. The words hell no, I'm not marrying you were on the tip of my tongue, but logic won out over rage. This was a plane with hundreds of passengers. I couldn't let his behavior put them at risk. I grit my teeth. Understood. Luke smiled, satisfied. That's more like it. Now that you know your place, watch the door for me. Don't let anyone wander in. I stood by the cockpit door. I could hear the whispers and light laughter from inside. The atmosphere of betrayal seeped into my heart like a needle. Memories of us at the flight academy together bubbled up. Back then, he would sit in the training room, stealing glances at me and smiling while he wrote his logs. Later, when he became captain, his eyes only saw career and profit. And I became nothing more than a stumbling block to his version of freedom. I used to think he was just being manipulated. But today, I finally realized that the kindness he once showed never truly belonged to me. I don't know how much time passed before the door finally opened. Faye's cheeks were flushed, and her legs looked a bit shaky. She walked out with a forced air of grace. Sorry about that. I need to go to the restroom to freshen up. She brushed past me, her eyes full of the contempt of a winner. I looked into the cockpit. Luke was buttoning his shirt. His movements were practiced, and there wasn't a hint of shame on his face. Only the smug satisfaction of a man who just had exactly what he wanted. Through a haze of endless pain, the plane finally landed safely. I stood at the cabin door, overseeing the deplaning process. Faye came swinging her heels toward me, tossing her bag over her shoulder. She couldn't stop grinning. I reached out and blocked her path. Her face darkened instantly. What now? Still trying to pick on me? I kept my voice flat. Please wait, ma'am. You cannot leave the aircraft yet. We have a few things to verify. Faye exploded. Who do you think you are? You've been an attendant so long you think you're the damn TSA. The commotion drew the attention of several passengers. Luke pushed his way through the crowd. He let out a cold laugh as he approached. I thought you'd finally woken up, Gwen. Clearly you're still obsessed. I repeated firmly. She cannot leave the plane. Please cooperate. Cooperate. Luke's eyes turned icy. He stepped closer and lowered his voice. Stop acting like you have real power. You're just a lead purser. Who are you to tell me what to do? I'm the one in charge here. I make the calls. You think you're even in my league? He reached out to grab Faye's hand to lead her off the plane. I stepped forward to stop them. Without warning, he swung his hand and slapped me across the face. Don't push your luck, he hissed, his eyes bloodshot with rage. I'm reporting your little stunts the second I step off this plane. Your whole crew will never fly again. My cheek burned. Through the ringing in my ears, I finally heard the sound of hurried footsteps at the cabin door. Several men in uniforms at airport security and civil aviation inspectors marched in. The leader had a grim expression. He flashed his badge, cutting right through Luke's rant. Faye Nightingale? We've received a formal report. You are suspected of carrying prohibited items. Please come with us for questioning immediately. Faye's face turned white. She froze where she stood. I don't know anything. She shrieked, scrambling behind Luke. Luke! Luke immediately shielded her, glaring at the officers. You've got the wrong person. What prohibited items? We're leaving. Can't this wait? Before he could finish, two security officers grabbed him by the shoulders. With a swift, professional move, they pinned his arms behind his back. Luke's eyes nearly popped out of his head. What are you doing? I'm the captain. Exactly. That's why we're starting with you. Lucas Thorne, the leader said coldly. You are suspected of transporting contraband, abandoning your post during flight, and endangering aviation safety. You are under arrest. The snap of steel handcuffs echoed through the first-class cabin with absolute finality. Luke's arms were wrenched behind his back, his shoulders pinned against the leather bulkhead by two stone-faced federal agents. His captain's cap fell to the carpeted floor, kicked aside by the flurry of tactical boots. Let go of me. Do you have any idea who I am? Luke roared, his neck veins bulging against his starched white collar. I am the senior line captain for Skyfleet International. My father is on the regional oversight board. You can't touch me on my own aircraft. Captain Thorne, Special Agent Martinez of the Federal Aviation Security Bureau, said, not even blinking as he flashed a red-stamped federal search warrant. Your command was terminated the moment your wheels touched the runway. Step aside. Two forensic officers wearing blue nitrile gloves hoisted the black hardshell suitcase onto the first-class meal tray. Faye stood frozen in the aisle, her face drained of every drop of color, her breath coming in shallow, hyperventilating gasps. She clutched the back of a passenger seat so tightly that her acrylic nails bent backward, cracking against the plastic frame. It's not mine, Faye shrieked, her voice losing every trace of its sweet, girlish pitch, turning into a desperate, nails-on-chalkboard screech. Luke brought it on board. He signed the captain's personal waiver. I'm just a passenger. I don't know anything about that bag. Luke's head snapped toward her, his bloodshot eyes wide with pure stunned disbelief. Faye? Luke choked out, his voice cracking. What are you talking about? You handed me that bag at the gate. You said it was a collection of handmade souvenirs from your family's estate in Milan. I never said that. Faye screamed, backing away toward the emergency exit, her eyes darting like a trapped rat. You told me you were doing a favor for a business contact. You told me if I kept my mouth shut you'd get me a first-class seat and a permanent flight attendant contract. You lying bitch. Luke surged forward, but the two agents slammed him face down onto an empty seat, pinning his head against the cushion. Click. The forensic team used an electric cutter to shear through the heavy-duty brass padlock. The lid swung open. A collective gasp rippled through the security detail and the remaining ground crew. Beneath a thin layer of designer silk scarves lay 12 vacuum-sealed industrial bricks of high-purity synthetic opioids, packed alongside 8 lead-lined canisters containing 52 uncertified industrial-grade diamond roughs, stolen contraband valued at over $6 million on the international black market. Agent Martinez turned slowly, his eyes locking onto Luke like gun barrels. Unregistered personal cargo, smuggling of Schedule I controlled substances, unlawful transport of illicit commercial assets through international airspace. Martinez stated, his voice devoid of emotion. Take them both into federal holding. Clear the aircraft. Luke lay pinned to the seat, his cheek pressed flat against the leather, staring at the glittering diamonds and the white bricks spilling out onto the tray table. He looked up, his gaze catching mine as I stood by the galley door. My uniform was still stained with the red wine Faye had poured over my head. My cheek was still stinging from the slap he had delivered 10 minutes ago. Yet I stood with my spine straight, my hands folded in front of my apron, my eyes completely cold, tranquil and clear. Gwen. Luke wheezed, blood from his split lip smearing against the seat fabric. Gwen, tell them. You know me. You've known me for 7 years. Would never smuggle drugs. Tell them Faye tricked me. Save me, Gwen. I took a slow, deliberate breath, reached up and unpinned the lead purser badge from my chest. Captain Thorne, I said, my voice carrying smoothly across the silent cabin. According to Civil Aviation Safety Protocol Section 9, Clause 4, all cargo boarded under a captain's personal exemption is the sole, absolute legal responsibility of the commanding pilot. I gave him a faint, polite, professional nod. Have a safe journey into federal custody. Within 2 hours, the story had detonated across the global aviation industry. Skyfleet senior captain arrested for $6 million drug and contraband smuggling ring. Flight safety endangered. Captain abandons controls for in-flight tries with smuggler. In the high-altitude corporate headquarters of Skyfleet International, the 28th floor boardroom was an inferno of panic. The chief operating officer, the director of flight standards, and the chief legal counsel sat around the oval mahogany table, reviewing the emergency evidence package I had submitted directly to the board's compliance server. Beside me stood Dr. Sean Vance, the head of the Flight Attendants Union, and my assistant Maya, who had preserved every digital log from the flight. Play the audio, CO Richard Hayes commanded, his face the color of thunder. The audio system in the ceiling crackled to life. The cockpit voice recorder, CVR, and the forward galley surveillance camera feed illuminated the massive projection screen. The voice of the first officer played through the speakers. Captain, we are entering the North Atlantic Oceanic Corridor. Protocol requires both pilots at the controls during the oceanic transition. Luke's arrogant, dismissive voice barked back. Get the hell out of the cockpit, Marcus. Faye is sitting in the right seat for the next 40 minutes. If you say a word to dispatch, I'll make sure your command upgrade is buried for the next 5 years. Then came the rustling of fabric, the clicking of unbuckled safety harnesses, and the sound of Faye giggling in the co-pilot's chair while playing with the autopilot heading selector. Look at me, Luke. I'm flying the plane. Take another picture from this angle. You're gorgeous, babe. Don't worry about the instruments, the computer does everything anyway. The boardroom was so silent you could hear the blood pumping in the executive's temples. The director of flight standards slammed his open palm onto the mahogany table, shattering his porcelain coffee cup. Gross dereliction of command, the director roared, his neck veins bulging. Abandoning the flight deck during oceanic cruise, allowing an unauthorized, unqualified civilian to occupy the control seat, intimidating a junior officer into leaving the cockpit. He turned to the chief legal counsel. Where is Thorne's father? Arthur Thorne tendered his resignation from the board 20 minutes ago. The counsel replied quietly. The federal prosecutors have already frozen his personal assets pending an investigation into whether the family trust was used to launder previous shipments. COO Hayes stood up, walked around the table, and stopped in front of me. He looked at my bruised cheek, my steady posture, and the comprehensive, time-stamped incident log resting in my hands. Purser Shaw, Hayes said, his voice deep with genuine respect. When did you know about the contraband? I suspected protocol deviations before boarding, I replied evenly. In accordance with federal whistleblower directives, I instructed my crew to avoid direct physical interference that could cause an in-flight security escalation. I signaled ground control via the ACAR's secondary digital maintenance channel. 40 minutes before descent. Hayes let out a long, exhausted breath and extended his hand. You saved 284 passengers from a catastrophic safety breach, and you protected this airline from a fatal liability crisis. On behalf of the board, I apologize for the conduct of our flight crew. He turned to the corporate secretary. Issue an immediate, permanent revocation of Lucas Thorne's airman certificate. Strip his pension, terminate his contract with cause, and hand all internal recordings over to the Department of Justice. He looked back at me. And Purser Shaw, your appointment as Director of In-Flight Operations and Cabin Safety is effective as of 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. 3 days later. The Federal Detention Complex in Brooklyn. The visitation room was cold, gray, and smelled of industrial bleach and stale coffee. A thick pane of scratch-resistant Lexan glass separated the visitors from the inmates. I sat down on the metal stool, placing my handbag neatly on the counter. The heavy steel door on the other side clicked open, and a guard escorted Luke inside. He was unrecognizable. The pristine, gold-striped captain's uniform was gone. He wore a baggy, bright orange federal jumpsuit. His manicured hair was greasy and unwashed, dark purple circles hung beneath his hollow, bloodshot eyes, and his hands were clamped in heavy steel cuffs chained to his waist. When he saw me sitting on the other side of the glass, he lunged forward, slamming his chained wrists against the counter, picking up the plastic receiver with trembling fingers. "Gwen!" Luke gasped, his voice cracked, hoarse and shaking with desperate, frantic energy. "Gwen, thank God you came. You have to talk to the board. Tell them it was all Faye. Tell them she used hypnosis or that she slipped something into my drink. My father won't take my calls. The lawyers are asking for $2 million in retainer fees that I don't have." I picked up the receiver and held it to my ear. I didn't speak. I simply looked at him. "Gwen, please." He wept, tears cutting clean tracks through the grime on his unshaven face. "We were supposed to get married in October. We bought the house in Long Island. 7 years, Gwen. 7 years of our lives. You can't just throw me away over one mistake." "One mistake, Luke?" I said softly. My voice was calm, clear, and utterly devoid of warmth. "Was it a mistake when you forced an uninspected cargo container onto a commercial airliner with 284 lives on board? I didn't know what was in the bag," he screamed into the receiver. "Was it a mistake when you kicked your co-pilot out of the cockpit so your mistress could take selfies in the control seat?" Luke choked on his words, his face turning an ashen gray. "Was it a mistake when you stood at the cabin door, looked at the woman who spent 7 years supporting your career, and slapped her across the face in front of 100 passengers?" I was angry. I was stressed. Luke pleaded, banging his forehead against the glass. "You know how high pressure the captain's seat is." I was out of my mind. Faye was whispering in my ear, telling me you were trying to control me, that you were jealous of her beauty. I was an idiot, Gwen. A blind, pathetic idiot. "You're right about one thing, Luke," I murmured, leaning slightly closer to the glass. "You were an idiot." I pulled a crisp, white legal document from my bag and pressed it flat against the Lexan pane. It was an official certified statement from the United States District Attorney's Office. Luke's eyes darted frantically across the text on the document. Interrogation transcript. Defendant Faye Nightingale. Date: October 14, 2024. The transcript was brutal in its clinical precision. Investigator: how long have you been coordinating with the Mediterranean contraband syndicate? Faye: 14 months. Lucas Thorne was never a partner. He was an asset. I targeted him at the flight academy because he was arrogant, insecure, and desperate for validation. He believed whatever I whispered to him. Whenever I needed a high-value shipment cleared through customs, I let him sleep with me and told him he was my hero. Investigator: did he know about the contents? Faye: he didn't care. He was too busy pretending to be a king. He's the dumbest man I've ever met in my life. Luke's jaw dropped. His breath stopped in his chest. His hands began to shake so violently that the heavy steel chains rattled against the metal counter with a deafening clatter. An asset? Luke whispered, his voice cracking into a high, broken sob. She called me an asset? She never loved you, Luke, I said, my voice carrying the weight of a funeral toll. She used your pride as a crowbar to pry open your cockpit, and she tossed you into a federal penitentiary the second the pressure dropped. No. Luke began to weep hysterically, sliding down off the metal stool, his knees hitting the concrete floor. Gwen, what about you? You loved me. You saved me during the simulation board exams. You cooked for me when I had night shifts. You loved me. I looked down at the weeping, shattered man through the glass. I remembered the cold wind tearing at my clothes 10,000 feet in the air. I remembered the sharp glint of the shears slicing through my parachute harness. In my previous life, I remembered his venomous words as I plummeted toward the earth. Did you think doing that would make me love you? In your dreams. A faint, serene smile touched the corners of my lips. The woman who loved you died a long time ago, Luke, I whispered into the receiver. The woman standing before you today is the one who grounded you. Forever. I set the plastic receiver back onto its metal cradle. Gwen! No, don't hang up. Gwen, please! Luke shrieked, clawing at the thick glass with his fingernails, screaming until his vocal cords tore. But the heavy steel door behind him was already opening. 2 federal marshals grabbed him by the arms, dragging his thrashing, screaming body backward into the dark corridors of the cell block. I turned around, adjusted the lapels of my tailored Navy executive coat, and walked out into the bright, crisp autumn morning. 6 months later, the United States Federal District Court in Manhattan handed down the final sentences. Faye Nightingale was convicted on 12 counts of interstate drug trafficking, international smuggling of conflict minerals, and conspiracy to commit aviation sabotage. She was sentenced to 22 years at the Federal Correctional Institution in Danbury, with 0 possibility of early parole. Lucas Thorne was convicted of gross criminal negligence in command of a commercial aircraft, aiding and abetting the transport of controlled substances, and felony assault. He was sentenced to 14 years at the United States Penitentiary in Canaan. His commercial pilot's license, flight instructor ratings, and flight medals were permanently revoked by the FAA, and he was ordered to pay $400,000 in restitution to Skyfleet International. His father's estate was dismantled to pay off the legal defense fees, leaving his family disgraced and bankrupted. On the morning the verdict was announced, I stood on the open observation deck of Terminal 4 at John F. Kennedy International Airport. The morning sun was brilliant, painting the vast expanse of the tarmac in shades of shimmering gold and azure blue. Parked at Gate 22 was Skyfleet's brand new flagship Airbus A350-1000, its sleek titanium fuselage gleaming under the morning light. Director Shaw. A crisp, professional voice called out from behind me. I turned around. Maya stood there, dressed in an immaculate, sharp Navy lead purser uniform, holding a digital flight tablet and 2 cups of hot coffee. The pre-flight inspection for Flight 001 to Tokyo is complete, Maya smiled, handing me a cup. The new crew coordination protocols have been fully implemented across all international routes. The cabin crew is ready for your inaugural inspection. I took the coffee, feeling the steady, honest warmth of the cup against my fingers. I looked out at the runway where a heavy wide-body jet was accelerating, its powerful engines roaring with majestic authority, lifting its nose gracefully into the sky, cutting through the low morning clouds toward the open horizon. My heart was light. My chest was vast, clear, and unburdened. I adjusted the gold wings pinned above my heart, stepped through the boarding gate, and walked with steady, confident strides toward the sunlit sky that belonged wholly and beautifully to me.